Hi, my name is Steve Rahi. I'm a Premier Field Engineer specializing in management technologies. Today's discussion is part 4 of a series focusing on enrollment of various device types for management in Intune. Today's session is specifically on Android and the various enrollment options there. A little bit of troubleshooting near the end. As we get started, I do want to call out one of my colleagues, Jack Pullman, who has been a good resource to me to validate a few ideas, as you'll see as we go through the Android discussion. It does line up really well with what we've kind of the concepts we've talked about with Windows and iOS already. But there's a few different things, and Jack was there to help vet just a few ideas that I needed to have a sanity check on as I was putting this together. So thanks a lot, Jack. In terms of the agenda, very similar to what we've done in other enrollment sessions. The bulk of what we'll do is spend our time with the enrollment options. It's a little bit on supported platforms, some discussion after we do the enrollment part, but the bulk of it will be on the enrollment options. So also an acknowledgement as we get started. So in the Android ecosystem, man, there are a lot of devices, lots of types of devices and variants and so on. So it gets to a point that it can start to seem overwhelming. What I really want to do in this session is kind of try to simplify that down so that we understand the options. There is really good agreement between what we've talked about already in previous sessions with Windows and iOS and Android. We use some big broad categories for Windows and iOS of BYOD devices, personally owned devices, corporate owned devices, right? And those same labels apply with Android, but there are a number of different labels that exist in the Android ecosystem that don't exist in the others. You'll see as we go through that. For consistency, still want to keep those big broad buckets in mind, BYOD and corporate-owned devices that we're trying to enroll, because they do apply here quite nicely. In terms of supported platforms and requirements, so broadly, supported platforms, Android version 4.4 or better for standard Android, or Samsung KNOX standard 4.4 or better. So I'll call out here on the next slide, you will see a reference to Samsung KNOX 2.4 or better. And both of these are true. Samsung KNOX standard 4.4 or better is for enrollment, and Samsung KNOX 2.4 or better on the next slide is for something called KNOX mobile enrollment, right? So just note that whenever you see it. So in terms of requirements, you do need an MDM management solution. In the context of what we're talking about, that will be Intune. You also will need Azure AD along with Intune, right? And so on. For Azure AD, as I'll probably call out a couple of times and show you, the device, the Android device, will appear in Azure AD. It will be registered in Azure AD. It will not be joined to Azure AD. The only devices that can join to Azure AD are, in fact, Windows devices, right? The table below on the screen is just trying to paint the picture that I've already said verbally, and that is with Android, you have two big, huge buckets of devices. You have Samsung KNOX devices and everything else, right? The Pixels, the Nexus, the Asus, every manufacturer, Lenovo's that are out there, on and on and on we go, right? So as we're thinking about enrolling devices, for those devices that don't meet the KNOX standards, the standard requirements, they will be enrolled as conventional Android devices. We can still enroll them, but it won't necessarily have the added capabilities that Samsung brings with their KNOX platform. All right. So enrollment options broadly that are available for Android devices. There's something called conventional enrollment. This is a BYOD scenario. It is one that is driven by and requires the company portal. Conventional Android enrollment can happen with all supported Android versions from 4.4 KitKat or better. So you see right below this that I start calling out Android 5.0, Android 5.1. I say conventional can apply to everyone. And that's true. It is possible to block the pieces of Android Enterprise so that the device will be enrolled as conventional. Another way to say it, it's possible to block work profiles so that the device can maybe be enrolled conventional. And usually not, probably not. Most organizations would want those capabilities. But as you'll see later on in the session, there is a call out where it is possible to do some blocking if you want to, right? So as of Android 5.0, Google introduces Android Enterprise, two sub-umbrellas under that, and one of them is called Work Profiles, and the other is called Kiosk Management. So Work Profile starts in Android 5.0, Kiosk Management at 5.1, and Work Profiles is basically a relabeling BYOD, right? Work Profiles is different a little bit than BYOD in the way it's implemented, but in concept is very similar to BYOD. Kiosk Management is more managing a device, an Android device, without the user so much in scope. Right? There's several ways to enroll a device so that it ends up being a kiosk that is managed by Intune. Again, that's Android 5.1 or better. And then finally, there's Samsung KNOX Mobile Enrollment, KME, and that requires KNOX version 2.4 or better. So you're starting to see a little bit of some of the different labels and so on that happen with Android, but hopefully as we run through this, it'll make sense. So the first stop along the way. And this is one that I actually am not going to show you in demo. I'll talk you through it. I intended to, but two things happened. One, I realized there's a lot of redundancy in doing this demo and then the other two live demos that I had planned. And really, this is not necessary. It's not necessary because the vast majority of devices that are out there will be running an OS that will really support work profiles, right? It's rare to find a device running Android KitKat 4.4 that cannot be upgraded to a higher level OS. The second reason is just from a practical purpose. I thought I had found an Android device running KitKat, and I actually bought it. It was $20 on Amazon, and I got it, and it had already been upgraded to a OS version beyond 5.0. So that kind of scuttled finally my plans to do the conventional demo. But it doesn't matter. It's not going to really take anything away that I can't do the demo because again, there's a lot of redundancy there. So in terms of the scenario, the details behind the scenario. So specifically, conventional enrollment is a BYOD, a personal device type of enrollment. It works with any supported device, right? The key is it is user initiated. It is a manual install using the company portal. Company portal absolutely required. Whenever you go through this process and then you look at the device in Azure AD, it will be Azure AD registered, right? This type of device in Intune will show up as a personally owned device. Makes sense. It's a BYOD type of scenario. So you would expect that, right? So not going to walk through that. Really no need to for the reasons cited. The process will be exactly the same minus one small difference that you'll see when I do my first live demo, and I'll call that difference out so you will see it. So we'll just go ahead and pass on by with this one. Okay, so let's get into the stuff that's really meaningful with Android, and that's to talk about what is Android Enterprise, set the stage for that, and then show enrolling in that. So what is Android Enterprise? Essentially, Android Enterprise, there's also a phrase out there called Android for Work. In fact, whenever you see me enroll some of these devices, you will see the label Android for Work still in Intune. Android Enterprise, Android for Work, same thing. Android Enterprise is just an evolution of Android for Work, right? And Android Enterprise is all about compartmentalization. Right? Here's where we draw the parallels to BYOD. BYOD is all about compartmentalization. On Windows, on iOS devices, whenever you have a device that's enrolled BYOD, then there are parts of that device that are ring-fenced to contain the managed details from Intune and the apps that are installed, the settings that are applied, that kind of thing. Intune knows what section of the device can be touched. Same thing here. It's just, I think Android did a really nice job of visually cueing users that their device, one, is being managed, two, there's a separate place on the device for those pieces that are being delivered to the device through that management solution, right? So essentially, to give the bigger definition, Android Enterprise is a set of features, services that separate personal apps and data from work apps and data. Again, think BYOD. Android Enterprise provides additional management capabilities and privacy when the Android device is being used for work, right? The concept of Android Enterprise, again, very much like BYOD. In general, it's going to protect user data while ring-fencing corporate data for management purposes, right? Okay, great. So what is work profile management, right? So very, very similar. When you manage an Android work profile device with Intune, you don't manage the full device. The management capabilities only affect the work profile that is created on the device during enrollment. Any apps deployed to the device with Intune get installed in the work profile. App icons in the work profile are differentiated from personal apps on the device. So again, a really nice job of visual cue so the end user knows this is the managed section and this other over here is the other non-managed section. And you see I called out that I'm going to do a demo here. I'm kind of making a decision on the fly. I think that it makes more sense to do the demo after I do the first enrollment. So I will call your attention to the work profile. It's a really easy thing to do, the work profile piece after I do the first enrollment and show you the difference, right? So I'll put that on pause for a moment and do that in a minute. Right? Okay, and then finally, what is Kiosk Mode? Kiosk Mode describes devices that are built for a specific purpose, or I guess I should say Kiosk Mode is applied to devices that are built for a specific purpose. These kiosk devices do not factor the user into management at all, and accordingly, there is no company portal that's required. So for work profile management, yeah, you're going to have a BYOD, a user scenario. Yes, in order to have that visual separation, we'll have that company portal, the user interaction, that kind of thing, because the user's really important potentially on the device. For Kiosk Mode, doesn't matter, right? Because we're managing the device, not the user, right? This Kiosk Mode device gives the company the most control over the device configuration and use. You'll see the Kiosk Mode options, and we'll talk about that more as we go forward. Okay, so trying to, again, give some concepts and definitions. So still think about the idea of corporate-owned devices broadly and the idea of BYOD devices broadly. So here you see essentially 5 enrollment modes, right? All of these enrollment modes will lead you to a type of enrollment. Again, the type of enrollment being either personally owned or corporate-owned devices. So let's just kind of walk down top to bottom. So the first one is this thing called corporate-owned single-user, COSU, right? This describes uniquely those devices that we're treating as kiosks or purpose-built devices. What we just talked about, that give the company the most control over what these devices and employees can do with the device. So in Intune today, we fully support this mode called COSU, right? Fully supported, fully implemented. You'll see me enroll a device with this mode here in a minute. There's 2 other modes that are kind of steps toward more user freedom, right? The COSU is the most restrictive on the user that there can be in the Android ecosystem. BYOD is the most freedom that a user can have while their device is managed. And then these 2 in between, COBO and COPE, are kind of stages toward that user freedom that still allows corporate to have control. So these 2, as we do this recording, are not supported in Intune. They are future plans to support those in Intune. I know work is continuing to do that, But right now, it's not something Intune supports, but it's an interesting definition to understand. So let's do the middle one, corporate-owned business only. So Kobo, like Kosu, is a device that's used primarily for business purposes. These are typically multiple use devices, may have multiple apps installed. The employee can typically use these devices to access corporate data, right? So the employee is being factored in here. And Intune don't know what that's going to look like once we finish the work to support that enrollment scenario, but the user actually begins to be focused in. It's not just a device that we're managing. Then the most freedom that a user will have besides BYOD is this thing called corporate-owned, personally enabled, COPE, right? This gives more control to the company than BYOD, but it allows more freedom for the employees than Kobo, right? So basically the company gives these devices to an employee, but the employee can also use it for personal tasks. Future support again on that one. So BYOD, talked about it, user's personal device, they choose to enroll it. And then there's a fifth one down here called Google Zero Touch. Sometimes you'll see it referred to as Android Zero Touch. Basically, this is an enrollment mode that enables devices to be plugged in as kiosks and works with Kosu scenarios, right? So Google Zero Touch is supported, very similar to what we've talked about with Apple DEP or Windows Autopilot. Definitely different way of doing things, right? But the concept is very, very similar. And again, we're talking about Android Enterprise. Just to be very clear, there is another style of enrollment that we'll talk about in a minute with Samsung. And so Google Zero Touch is specifically for Android Enterprise. There's a piece called KME, KNOX Mobile Enrollment, that I've already shown you as we've entered into the discussion, that is specifically for Samsung devices to do the same kind of thing, to enroll automatically, very similar to an Apple DEP-ish Windows Autopilot type experience. Again, a little bit different than even Google Zero Touch. All right? Okay. So still bringing that back to these big, broad labels, right? BYOD, that is our work profile enrollment. So enabling a work profile allows organizations to manage the business data, the separation from the user data. BYOD, again, and work profile through BYOD, it's a manual enrollment, requires Android 5.0 or better. Then contrast that to Kiosk Mode, specifically Kosu is the scenario right now in Google Zero Touch that will get us into a Kiosk Management mode. Here the device is a limited use device. Really the user is only able to operate within the defined boundaries of that kiosk device. There's 4 ways that we can actually enroll that device in Kiosk Mode. In fact, I should have put Google under here. I should have listed the 4. Either way. So you can enroll the device with near-field communication, Android 5.1 or better. You can use what's called a token entry, Android 6 or better, QR code, Android 7 or better, and then finally Google Zero Touch, Android 8 or better, right? So this is where you get a lot more fine-grained control and options in the Android ecosystem than you do in Windows or iOS, right? So I tried to illustrate that a couple of different ways. Here's one. Right? The goal of all of this is to enroll the device in Intune. So here are the enrollment mechanisms. BYOD, the user initiates the enrollment. Android 5 or better. Again, Android Enterprise, right? Specifically. So the user installs the company portal, works through that workflow, and ultimately gets installed and joined to Intune. Or then you have the near-field communication, which does shift us into the Kiosk Kosu mode. Typically, this would maybe be driven by IT, but could be done by a user, perhaps. Requires Android 5.1 or better. Requires a specifically formatted NFC tag, custom app, and NFC tag creator. Basically, devices bump each other. One learns from the other to enroll, how to enroll, where to enroll, and then the enrollment takes place. This is the only one that I don't have screenshots and such to show you about it, because I don't have the devices to be able to do it. but the concept is very familiar in other ways. The idea of near field communication and so on. So hopefully, conceptually, not that big a deal. And I don't really see this one of any of them being the highest use anyway. So I didn't take the time to build out the demo. But moving on, so now this one, which is token entry. This one, again, it could be user-driven, but I would suspect is more going to be IT-driven. Again, shifts us into Kiosk Mode. Android 6.0 or better requires a token generated by Intune. So if you can tell from these setup screens, and I'll blow these up in a minute as we walk through it, this is the setup process from a factory reset device or one that you take out of the box. So as long as the user had the knowledge on how to do this, they could, right? But probably easier in many cases for IT to do it, really quick for IT to do this kind of thing in bulk, right? So that's an option. Then there's using the QR code. Again, shifts us into, all of these shift us into Kiosk Mode. Think this will probably be primarily IT driven, though in theory could be handled by the user themselves as well. Android 7.0 or better requires the QR code generated by Intune. And then finally, Google Zero Touch, right? This is the one that these days I would expect most IT organizations to opt for because it is very, very easy and doesn't require anything extra during setup other than the fact that you sign on to the internet, right? And so on. And I'll show you this one. I'll show you these three as we go through, right? Okay. So in terms of setting this up, right? The requirements for this. So two, again, big broad categories. If your device is a personal device, we still require a Google account with Google Play installed, right? So even if it's a personal device, that Google account with Google Play will facilitate some of that management. So any device that supports Android for work profiles also supports conventional Android management. If you want to restrict the ability for a device to enroll Android Enterprise, then you can actually do that. So all Android devices, including those that support work profiles, say another way, could actually be enrolled as conventional Android devices. You can actually block devices from enrolling Android Enterprise if you want to, or you can allow all devices that support work profiles to enroll as work profile devices. That is a setting that you can choose and control. Let me show you what I mean by that. I didn't have this listed as a demo, but I want to show you what I mean so it's clear. We've talked about enrollment restrictions before. When we first started this series, we talked about the various other options for enrollment restrictions being one. Let me pull Intune in. So if I go under, I'm under device enrollment and I click on enrollment restrictions, then I can go and look at my, I'll look at my default profile and look at properties of that. And under properties, I have a couple of options. I have 5 platforms configured here: Android, iOS, Windows, down here, so on, right? So here's what I'm talking about. These enrollment restrictions you have control over. Do you want to allow standard Android devices to enroll? Sure. Do you want to allow Android work profile devices to enroll? Sure. Now, the documentation, as I recall, and so don't hold me to this because I've actually configured my environment, so I don't remember now, indicates that Android work profiles are blocked by default. I don't know that that's true anymore, right? It doesn't make sense necessarily to have that be the default option. It is something that it makes sense to let you have the choice about what you want to do, right? So that's where I say that if you have even a work profile enabled device and you choose not to enroll it that way for whatever reason, then you can block it here and it will enroll as a conventional and get all of the management as a conventional device, right? But wanted to show you that to clarify what I was referencing, right? Okay, so I think that's what I want to talk about on that screen. Just wanted to call that out. In terms of configuring Android Enterprise, there is some stuff to do. So it's required to enable Android Enterprise Enrollment that you do a little bit of configuration in Intune. Otherwise, there won't be the pieces that will kind of link it all together to facilitate enrolling as Android Enterprise. So let me show you what I mean. So we're pulling back in the Intune console. I've launched the Intune portal. And so one of the things that's required is that the MDM authority be set to Intune, right? And here you see that it is, MDM authority set to Intune. And then beyond that, we need to go down to device enrollment, Android enrollment specifically, and then managed Google Play. So managed Google Play is the portal that enables this whole thing called Android Enterprise. We have to give Google Play permission to interact in the Intune world or in the Intune system so that interactions go back and forth. So I just simply click on this, and I've already done this, right? So I'll just roll through. Grant permission for Microsoft to send data back and forth with Google, right? You see that I'm set up and everything's good. My registration date, everything's good. Here's my Gmail account that I used for specifically setting up this enrollment. Connect my Intune tenant and to an administrative Google account to enable. That's what this account is up here, right? So I've done that. And then open up the Managed Google Play Store and click Approve on the company portal app. Now, as any company portal that you pull down will actually work. The reason that you want to do this is because as the company portal gets updated, you want that company portal to be automatically triggered to upgrade on the device, right? And so by doing this approval through Google Play, we enable that. So if I just go ahead and click on this, open the company portal, pulls up or the Google Play Store, you see that it's already approved, no problem. And so I've gone through that process, and I'm good to go here. So a little bit more minutia here. So when you go through the Google sign-on page and enter the Google account that will be associated with your Android management tasks for the tenant, right? Know that this is the Google account that your company IT admin should share. Think of it maybe as a service account to manage and publish apps in the Google Play console. You can use an existing Google account, create a new one. I would urge considering creating a new one. Again, think of it as a service account. The account you choose, key, cannot be associated with a G Suite domain in the Google environment, right? So I've never worked with a G Suite domain, but that's a common thing, as I understand it, in certain management spaces in the Google environment, right? So it has to be a unique account, not associated with a G Suite domain. So that's part one, right? Setting up this interaction. Part two is that we need to create what's called an enrollment profile, right? So let's go back over here, and we've just done this. Now we need to set up kiosk and task device enrollments. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this, right? And then I need to create a enrollment profile. I've already got one created, so I'll just show you this one. So either way, you can create it new. I'll look at mine, it's already there, same options. Two things. Need to look at the properties. Well, first of all, notice the token expiration date. When you go and set up an enrollment profile, you will see that the token expiration date is 90 days. That's something that is a Google thing. It's really not an Intune thing, as I understand it. It's enforced by Google. And so you will need to renew these tokens on a periodic basis to allow continued enrollment, right? Now, under properties, I can see some of the detail, again, just really the token expiration date. What I really care about is this thing called the token, right? So whenever I first set this up, the enrollment profiles, I just somehow completely missed looking at show token, right? But I did see, hey, you can replace the token or you can revoke the token or whatever you need to do. So I just went on and did the next steps I'll show you in a minute. But it's really important to know that this show token is here because we've already mentioned, and I'll show you next, the idea of using a token to enroll the device right? And then also using a QR code to enroll the device. And so my mind started thinking, well, where do I go get these tokens? How do I create the QR codes? And there's a lot of documentation out there from Google about creating the QR codes and so on. And then finally I realized, I don't have to do any of that because the tokens and the QR code are all here, right? And I finally found these things. Should have been obvious. This is your token and this is your QR code. So with one of these, depending, you can easily use this to enroll the device. In fact, these tokens and or QR codes enable every enrollment scenario for Android Enterprise except for two, near field communication and also BYOD. But the token enrollment makes sense, it uses the token. The QR enrollment makes sense, it uses the QR code. And the Google Zero Touch also uses the token, as you'll see in a minute. So I've got this created and good to go, right? So let me pull this over. So now that I've got the device enrollment profile created, right, just to show it, the device enrollment profile is created here, device enrollment profile. Now what I need to do is create a group that will recognize devices that have been enrolled using this device enrollment profile and bring them into Intune correctly. So here, and then I can maybe do things uniquely on those devices, target policy, those kind of things that I would want to. So I will just go to groups. I could create a new group, but I've actually already got a group created. I simply call mine Enroll Kiosk Devices, right? This is a dynamic group. And so the criteria for the dynamic query under dynamic membership rules is simply enrollment profile name matches kiosk devices. So that was the name of my enrollment profile. So whenever the token or the QR code is used and the device enrolls in Intune, then it's going to show that it matches this token or QR code, that enrollment profile. Will link it up to the group, and now that device will be manageable through this group. And Intune, you can put it in other groups too, but this kind of brings it all together, if you will. Right? Let's take Intune out of the picture again. Okay, moving ahead. So this one is again very similar to what we just talked about with conventional devices, except this one is under Android Enterprise. It is a BYOD scenario. The enrollment target is any Android work profile capable device. It is user-initiated manual BYOD. The end state of the device will be Azure AD registered. It is required to have the company portal because that's how the enrollment is done. This is the only kind of enrollment where the device will show up. This is the only kind of Android Enterprise enrollment where the device will show up as personally owned, right? So this one I will walk through and do the demo real quick. All right, so I'm going to pull in just an Android device that I have. This is a standard Android device. You see the Intune company portal is actually installed. Actually, let me go away from this for a minute. I'll take this out of the way. Right, I just want to show you real quick. This is an Android device that is just 6.0, so very capable of work profiles. I could also do token-based enrollment if I wanted to reset this OS, whatever, but I'm going to use this to just do a BYOD type of enrollment. So if I scroll over, log into the company portal, again, company portal here, I downloaded it so I wouldn't have to wait on it. Just click sign in. And so bear with me as I type my long sign-in name. I really should find a way to shorten this. Okay, so hopefully I made no typos with that. Let me go ahead and click enter and go forward. Good. So now it's asking me for the password, so bear with me. I'm just going to move this off to the side for just a minute while I enter the password. And hopefully I got that password correct, so I'll pull it back onto the screen and tap sign in. Okay, good enough. So I've signed in. That seems to have been accepted. And so the process is going to continue. It's going to show me what steps need to happen. So I'm going to need to create the work profile. I need to activate the work profile, then update the device settings. These pieces, creating and activating the work profile, would not happen on a conventional device. So that's the real only difference in enrollment, is that we're going to have to go through the process of creating the work profile device. So what I'm going to do now is hit continue. Before I do that, let me tell you what's going to happen. It'll go through, create the work profile, and so on. And then we'll get back to a place where it shows me that I need to sign in to the company portal again. You don't really have to sign in. I'm not even going to touch the device. I'm going to wait for the device to re-sign in using the credentials I just used. So it's a seamless workflow, really, from here. So I'm going to press continue. Tell me about the privacy settings and things that I want to care about, what is going to happen to the device. Hit continue. What's next? OK, work profile permissions. And then encrypt the device, right? So those are just requirements. I'm going to allow that. Click next. And so setting up my work profile. So it's registering my device, shift screens, tells me what it's doing. So my organization is going to control this profile and help keep the device secure and so on. I'm going to set that up, no problem. Say, yeah, we're good to go. And off we go. Right, so keep these screens in mind, because you'll see another very, 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 very similar enrollment process here in a moment when we do Samsung KNOX. Just a little bit different pathway for Samsung KNOX. So registering my device, and this might take just a few seconds to get all the way through this. Registering my device, and then we should be good to go to look around. Okay, so moved on to the next level. Here's the sign-in prompt again. I'm not touching it. It moves very quickly to where it connects back into Intune, does phase 2, if you will, of this. It shows that I've already got the work profile created. I'm just going to tap continue to activate that work profile. Right, and again, it goes back to registering my device, shifts through that pretty quick, and continues on with the enrollment. So the enrollment process here using the company portal does require some user interaction. It's really not that bad of an experience at all, just tapping yes a few times just to make sure that the user is very aware of what's going on. Now adding my device to the company portal. That means this device in this company portal app will show up as managed. So it's working on doing that. Should skip through here pretty quick and moves on. So finishing up setting up the work profile in just a few more seconds and should be done. Almost there. There, moved forward. So now I'm enrolled. Now it's down to selecting the categories that we talked about in session 1 of enrollment. So I'm just going to select one and hit done. And enrollment is complete effectively. You can see that we're done. So one of the things that I didn't show you earlier, so here's the company portal, we're enrolled. One of the things that I did not show you earlier was this whole idea of the ring fencing of the device, where the work profile stuff is stored separately and differently than other apps on the device with a unique icon. That's because I knew I was going to install the company portal and it would show up and I could show it to you here. So this work icon, this is your work profile. So if I tap on it, you'll see the different icons. You see the orange circle that is on the icon to indicate this is a work profile managed app. Another way I could view it, if I just look at the apps icon, you'll see a mix here. You'll see some of them that are work profile apps and some that are non-work profile apps. You can see even the change or the designation difference here, right? But certainly nice to have the separation with just everything within that one profile known as work, right? So that is BYOD enrollment for just an Android enterprise device. So now that we have that enrolled, if we go back into the Intune portal and look at our devices, we will see a new device by now certainly has been registered, and its designation will be Android for Work, right? So here it is, Android for Work. I can tell that this is the device that I just registered because I've added the enrollment date column, and it is exactly lined up just a few minutes ago on today's date, right? And it is here as a personally owned device, right? So I know it's matching that BYOD type scenario. So let's go ahead and pull Intune out of the mix, and we'll come back to it as we go along. Okay, so that's BYOD. That's a live demo to show you how to enroll, and so we'll keep going forward. Next are some scenarios to enroll the device as corporate owned, right? We'll start with token-based enrollment. So here, the idea is to use a token, that token that I showed you. Just again, a reminder, right? Let me pull that back in. Under device enrollment here, and then Android enrollment, there's this kiosk and task device enrollment. Here's my enrollment profile, my token, show token. This is the token that you will see used as a part of the screenshots of doing this, right? So let's pull that back out. The enrollment process will be automatic. This happens during setup. I say it's automatic. It will require the user to input the token, but the setup all happens automatically. No process similar to what you saw me do with the company portal. The company portal isn't even part of this because this is kiosk enrollment, right? The company portal doesn't matter. The user doesn't matter, right? And the device will end up being corporate enrolled, right? So here are the screens that I've captured. Let me go to the next screen and I'll show these to you specifically, right? All right, so just a few processes along the way. Again, requires Android 6.0 or better. Here's our initial setup screen. I'm not showing every single setup screen along the way, but just tap in, let's go. Finally, we get to a place where we're asked to sign in with a Google account. Typically, that would be an email or phone number, but to trigger the token-based enrollment, AFW #setup is what would be typed in here, and that will tell Android to go forth and try to enroll using a token. So the next page, we put in that token and confirm that token. And then once we do that, the next page, we in fact see that the device is recognizing now that it's an Android enterprise device and it needs to set up Android device policy, proceed to install, and then configure or finish on through the setup screens. The device is enrolled. All right, so that's token-based enrollment. Now, there's also enrollment known as QR code-based enrollment. Showed you that already. Here's the QR code right down here that we would use to do that enrollment. It does happen during setup again. And so it would be a device that is Android work profile capable, Android 7.0 or better. Does happen during the setup process. And again, the company portal, not required. Just two screens that I have captured for this. So the unique way in which you set up QR code enrollment is at the very first setup screen. Just tap on the screen multiple times and it will transition into the screen that asks for the QR code. So at that point, all you need to do is scan the QR code, and then enrollment will proceed, and the device will become enrolled in Intune, right? Now, some devices might require an external QR code reader. Some won't. Mine didn't, right? So probably most of the time you'll be okay with devices these days, but either way, that is possible to do. And then finally, zero-touch enrollment. right? Again, work profile capable device, Android 8.0 or better. It will be something that happens during setup. It will not involve the company portal. So to show you this, really, well, here's some links for setting up zero touch and so on. So this is, as I mentioned, similar to Apple Dep. Similar in process, right? But also similar in the fact that I cannot have an Android enterprise portal myself. I'm not a real company. So I had to request one of my colleagues that has access to Microsoft's version of the Android enterprise portal to set me up in that portal so that my device can participate in Android Zero Touch, Google Zero Touch. So what they did, they basically, there's a form to fill out, and so this will show the detail for me, right, and so on. The key is this piece right here. So this hopefully looks familiar to you. This is the token that was in the Intune company portal. So just right here to put them side by side, right? This token, that token. Same token. That's why I say all of these are driven by the token and or the QR code. So once this is specified in the portal for Android, Google Zero Touch, whatever, then now whenever I power on a device that is capable of zero touch enrollment, then the device will actually do zero touch enrollment. So what I did is I just took my Nokia 6 device, which is capable of zero touch enrollment, and recorded a little video of walking through the setup experience. So I did shortcut this by editing out some of the pieces that took a little bit of time to take it from like a 9-minute video down to 3-minute video, whatever it is. But we'll go ahead and start that now. And this is powering the device up, Android Enterprise, shifting to the Nokia screen, and that will go then into setup directly, right, as we go through it. Great, to the setup screen. So now I just tap in Let's Go. Pardon my big fingers there on the screen. I don't have a SIM card, so I just tap to skip that. And then I'm going to set it up as a new device and join into my wireless network so I get internet access. So just type in the password that I skipped through and don't show all of. Click Connect. I had trouble hitting connect as I was going through this for some reason. But either way, so once we get the network connection, we connect, check in, and find that, in fact, we are needing to set up as a work profile enabled device. And we'll show that to you. Great, so now I've got the device set up. Accept and go. So setting up the work profile device, and as it goes along, I've shortcutted a couple of the timings on the screen so it doesn't take as long as it would normally, at least on this device. So now I'm downloading the Google Play Store. So you'll see it jump ahead here in just a second as I edit out a little bit of the video. There we go, 93% and finishing up. And then we'll move from there to updating the Google Play Store. And then we'll move from there to downloading another Google Play Services, right? So that will take, this was the longest part of the download is the Google Play Services, but you'll see that it, again, bumps along pretty quickly here, up to 10, and then now up to 95%, 98, whatever, after that. And then we'll install the Google Play Services, and after that, we'll be done, I believe. Yeah, updating Google Play Services. Then we'll have the desktop up and running that we can just quickly see. All right. All right, so now there's a registration screen. So now we're registering the device. And then finally, we are at the home screen, good to go. You do see the Play Store reference and so on. Didn't really dig into the UI here very much at all, but that's the process for Android Zero Touch. I will confirm for you, having messed around with the device after it was in this state, you see that icon at the bottom, middle, kind of might make you wonder. It doesn't really look like the company portal app, but my eyes were drawn to it just to see. And in fact, it's not. It's the Contacts app. I mentioned as we go through and do a zero-touch enrollment, or said another way, a kiosk mode enrollment. In this way, I'm doing zero-touch to get there, right? But it would be the same whether it's NFC or token or QR code, doesn't matter. All of those will get us into kiosk mode. There is no company portal. There's no company portal installed on this device here at all. As I explored around, yeah, we do have the Play Store available to us and so on, but not nearly what we would have. Even other services and icons of just a standard device. So now that we've got that complete, I actually, as a part of doing that video and showing it to you, I had reset that actual phone that was used to do the video and went along with the process to do another zero-touch enrollment. So let's go over to all devices now and look at it. So if I go to all devices, and look, here is my Android Enterprise device. It is corporate owned, right? Contrasting that to my Android for Work BYOD that I enrolled, which is personally owned. We see that it was just added to the console now, as of whenever I was doing the recording here just a couple of minutes ago. So it is fully enrolled, fully managed, good to go. Now, if we look at Azure AD, I meant to do this earlier. Hopefully I'll see my Android devices here. Join type. Azure AD. There's too many. Let me get rid of some of the columns. There's too many columns here. Let me get rid of enabled version. I don't care about that for here. Don't care about that. Don't care about this. Don't care about this. Just trying to clear up some of the fields to apply. Right? So join type would be registered. So these aren't showing the status yet. I was hoping they would, but they will come in Azure AD registered versus Azure AD joined whenever that finally happens. Hasn't happened yet, but it will. Right? So we'll just pull that out for now. So that's Android Zero Touch, right? So I'll just move on from here. Okay, so shifting our focus to KNOX mobile enrollment specifically. Actually, probably this slide is one out of place. That's okay. KNOX mobile enrollment is the equivalent to Android Zero Touch, right? So actually, let me go forward one slide and then I'll go back. Actually, two slides and then I'll go back. So there's a difference in enrolling a Samsung KNOX device. Sorry, let me say it again. You can have a Samsung KNOX device that you enroll using the BYOD approach. It still is manageable using the KNOX capabilities, right? Even though you enrolled it BYOD. KNOX mobile enrollment is the zero-touch way to take a Samsung KNOX device and enroll it most efficiently without really having to have much hands-on, right? So I'll show you this first. Let me pull in my Samsung KNOX device. Stand by. Okay, so this particular device is just a Samsung Galaxy Tab. And so the experience you're going to see as I enroll this device is very, very, very similar to what you saw whenever I did my BYOD. Right? Because this is BYOD, it just happens to be Samsung KNOX in this case. So I'm going to launch the company portal, and similar experience to what we talked about. I'm just going to sign into it with my very long sign-in name again, so bear with me while I do that. So loading, great. And so now I need to sign in. So well, that was interesting. My Samsung device decided to reboot on me. So one moment, I will wait for it to come back up and then we will resume the video. Hang on a second. Okay, so I'm back. I realized what it was my power. This tablet was almost out of power and it disconnected and then the tablet ran out of power Either way, I'm back, and I went ahead and typed in my email address, which apparently I got wrong. So let's see. I'll fix it. All right, I think I can have it right now. Click next. Okay, good enough. So I do. Let me pull this off to the side again while I sign in real quick. All right, almost there, I believe. So that is hopefully my correctly typed password. And off we go, right? So very similar experience. What you'll see are very, very similar screens to what you saw with just enterprise enrollment. So I have to go through same kind of things. It's telling me about my battery power. I didn't fully charge it. That's okay. Hopefully we'll have enough. Just go through, except the Samsung agreement. Did you see that on the past screen? The Samsung agreement this time, right? A little bit different screens as we go through. Again, Samsung is who's providing this. So I'm going to go ahead and set up the work profile and so on. Take just a couple of seconds. You saw how long it took on the other one. Be similar for this one, right? And we'll be good to go. A two-stage here as well. So as it gets to the second sign-in screen, I will not touch it again. It will just kind of continue on. Again, all of this is the same company portal. It's just the company portal recognizes now it's on a Samsung device and it's interacting with the various APIs and different things on this device now a little bit differently. All right, so we continue on. And now we're into the experience in the company portal where we're just waiting to register my device and so on. And similar as before, we just wait as we go through these things. So it's registering. Now it's moving forward to where it's asking me to sign in again. It says I'm halfway there, good to go. We'll shift here in just a second and relaunch the company portal, re-sign into the company portal, and good to go. So just waiting on that. And so here we go. It's asking me to sign in, and it should go ahead and take care of that all by itself. I'm not going to touch anything. Signing in, good to go. Again, very similar process, just a little bit different because now we're on a Samsung device. We have some capabilities that are different because we're on Samsung KNOX device, and the company portal experience is very much similar, very consistent. Right, so now we're coming into the company portal. We see we've created our work profile. We're going to now activate the work profile, hit continue. So now we're registering the device. All right, so moving forward from there. And adding to the company portal. And again, very similar to what we saw. Finalizing the work profile setup, and then we should be done very, very quickly here. And we are basically done. Just waiting for it to shift to the next page. Great. So we're enrolled, good to go. I will go ahead and tag in the category so the company portal knows. And with that, we'll just take the device away because we're done with the enrollment. So at this stage, we can go in, and just to show you, let me just pull it back in. So we've created, we've activated, we've updated device settings. So good to go, all right? So at this point, we can go back into Intune and look at all devices. And at this stage, hopefully have 3 Android devices. We do. So here's the one that I enrolled with Android Zero Touch. Here's the one that I enrolled with BYOD. And here's the one that is the Samsung device right here. Here's BYD, here's Samsung, and here's Android Zero Touch. So we see them. And so both the ones that I loaded with the company portal directly are enrolled as personal owned. As I would expect, you really don't see much of a difference here. I mean, if you do want to dig in a little bit, you might be able to see some differences. Let's just take a quick peek at this one. So this is, let's see if we can even tell. The hardware on this thing is definitely the Samsung device with 7.11. It may not even be reported in here yet. Doesn't look like it. Anyway, so managing these is kind of different from enrolling these, so we'll leave it at that right now. But you see, we've completed the process. So I kind of have these slides. I should have ordered them a little bit differently. So now let me go back a little bit and talk about KNOX mobile enrollment. Because again, there's Samsung KNOX devices, and there's ways in which you enroll them, one of which is the BYOD company portal experience like you just saw. But there's this thing called KNOX mobile enrollment that you can use, and it's very, very similar to Apple DEP, Windows Autopilot, and Android Zero Touch, right? It is different, just like all of them. All of those ones that I just listed have differences, but the goal is the same, to make deployment of and enrollment of Samsung KNOX devices easy to go, right? So basically, same experience as before. Whenever you first power on your Samsung KNOX device and it connects to Wi-Fi, it will realize, hey, I need to be provisioned and joined to the Intune environment. And once it finishes setup, it will be joined, right? Here's a key difference. With Android Zero Touch, there is no company portal, right? It is designed as a kiosk, right? And no user interaction, so no company portal. That is not true for KNOX mobile enrollment. It does facilitate putting the company portal on the device, right? So what are the requirements? Obviously, KME needs to be available in your region. In China, KME is restricted, right? So be aware of that. It needs to support KNOX 2.4 or better. There are ports that need to be open to get to the KNOX servers, as well as certain URLs that need to be available and accessible. You need a Samsung account and access to the KNOX mobile enrollment portal to configure everything. Again, just like you need a portal to configure your iOS DEP experience, just like you need a portal to configure your Android Zero Touch experience, you will need a portal access for KNOX mobile enrollment. This is one I cannot show you, so let me skip forward to, there we go. I can't show you this at all because we don't have access, that I've found anyway, to a portal where I can stage my device and be able to provision it for you. But at this point, since we saw Android Zero Touch, and knowing, you know, it's kind of the same thing, just a little bit of a different place in which we go to get our enrollment profile. And the other difference is that it does use the company portal. Hopefully not a disappointment that I can't really demonstrate that to you, right? All right. So finally, enrollment and the company portal. So specifically Android and the company portal. So on all device types that use the company portal, and that's all of them potentially, the company portal is designed as that place where users can interact with the management service and be able to install applications and so on, interact with IT, whatever, for those pieces that are user-centric, right? In Windows, the company portal, not at all required for enrollment. In iOS, the company portal, not at all required for enrollment. That's kind of true and not true for Android, right? For Android devices specifically, there are capabilities built into Android, but as the ecosystem has kind of branched a couple of different ways, and especially as Android in its early days was being built and evolved, there were not a great deal of management capabilities native to Android. There were APIs that could be called and different settings that could be called, but no inbuilt really strong management engine. So the company portal and the company portal equivalents, if you're talking about other management solutions such as Mobile Iron and AirWatch and different things, they would augment the capabilities of native Android by building some of those capabilities into the code of the company portal. That's why the company portal is integral for certain enrollment scenarios. So certainly for conventional BYOD, company portal 100% required. Not only is it the enrollment mechanism, but it interacts with the Android APIs and helps drive an even better experience than just native capabilities that are in the Android platform. Right? That's where Samsung really took off and built a lot of capabilities into their flavor of Android OS that were above and beyond what was in the basic Android OS. So for conventional BYOD, for work profile BYOD, absolutely the company portal is required. Again, the company portal is the engine for MDM enrollment in these BYOD scenarios. When we get to work profile, there are more capable settings in the native Android OS, so the company portal is still required, but the management really leans on the Android APIs, right, that are native, and so the company portal knows how to flex to that. For work profile, Kiosk, Kiosk Management, absolutely no company portal required. Management in those scenarios, though, is limited to the native Android APIs and Google services, right? And that's not meant to say that those services are not sufficient. They do a good job of doing what Android needs to do. It's just the company portal plays no role in that case. For Samsung KNOX BYOD, absolutely company portal required. Again, you saw I used it to enroll. For KNOX KME, company portal is delivered through the KME setup and so on, right? So anyway, just to give you an idea, company portal is, again, a little bit different in the Android space than in Windows or iOS. So I wanted to call that out. Okay, so I call company portal out here again just to say, I don't know. I may do a session just specifically on the company portal. I haven't decided that yet. I'll show you a little bit about the company portal in just a minute, but there's understanding and knowing how to use the company portal is really pretty important if you're going to manage any device that needs the company portal, and so that users can get the most out of it. IT can give the users the best experience through it, etc. But I will save that for now and just mention that. Okay, so again, enrollment done, now what? So one thing to understand, and one thing I want to try to illustrate to you here, I think, in the console here in just a minute. So I talked about in Windows and in iOS sessions that there is a service that will maintain a persistent connection to the Windows device to the iOS device, right? In the Windows world, that's called the Windows notification channel. In the Apple world, that's called the Apple push notification channel. And that's the mechanism that enables being able to force a synchronization to a device, for example, or to immediately send out a notification from Intune to the device whenever a configuration changes. Like if I were to trigger a wipe request or a delete request, right? That needs to happen pretty quickly. There is an equivalent in the Android ecosystem, and it's called the Google Play Services, right? So again, this isn't supported in China. Google Play Services are required to be able to give this extra level of sync and touch and so on. But it's not available in all kinds. Let me show you what I mean. So for example, if I go, let me pull back in the portal. If I look at all devices, right, and look at my Windows device, right, for example, I see an option to sync that device. And so I know that that happens because of that Windows notification channel I referenced, right? If I look at an iOS device, if I have one, do I have one? Yes. If I look at my iOS device, I have a sync option here, right? Well, if I look at my Android device, I also have a sync option for both my Android for work and my Samsung KNOX device sync. But if I go up and I look at my, hopefully this won't make me a liar, look at the one that I enrolled in Kiosk Mode with no company portal at all, no Google services, there is not a sync option here. And I found that odd, and I still don't know for sure if I'm seeing this right. I think I am. But it makes sense if we're using the Google Play services as the glue that holds this device together to Intune to be able to kick it, if you will, that the sync would be present whenever we have, the BYOD, the company portal, the Android for Work, Google services installed, and may not be on the Kiosk device, which is more limited, just relying on the native iOS Google service installed. Anyway, just to show that to you, take a look and you'll see, right? Okay. And then finally, troubleshooting, right? So this is one that I actually forgot to update this. That's interesting. So enrollment troubleshooting is something that you will need to do in most scenarios. The company portal will help you with that to make that real for you, just like it will on iOS and so on. Not so much on Windows. Windows takes a different path, but something you need to know about. And so there's different troubleshooting things we talked about in the Apple scenario. There's some different things that we can do in the Google scenario. I'm going to save. Well, let me show you. Let me show you the company portal real quick on a Google device. Hang on a sec. All right, so I've shifted back to my just standard Lenovo Google tablet. So I'm just going to open, or tablet running Android. So I'm just going to open the company portal. And there's a couple of different places here. Looks like it's kind of interestingly in this place. Shouldn't be. Hopefully it will resolve itself in just a second. But either way, just a sec. Okay, this is the view I wanted. So the device, again, lab, doing a lot of moving parts. I had probably inadvertently kicked to remove the profile before, after I got done with that device for the demo. Either way, it's here, right? So just really quick in the company portal, there's a few areas. There's the devices that I own that you see. There's the apps. Now the apps have to come from the Google Play Store. This is a device managed with Android Enterprise Management, so all of that comes through Google Play. So what I wanted to show, and then there's Contact IT. I haven't set anything like that up, but your user can interact with the company portal. If you click on the top right, you can see different things such as settings, perhaps, where you can interact with, setting up troubleshooting options and whether you want verbose there, security policy, whether you want to do automatic crash reporting, and so on. So all of that can be configured. There's also other different things you can interact with here, looking at the user's profile and different things that are in here if you want to. Right. Anyway, so I'm not going to belabor the point for this. Really, the focus of this is enrollment, but there are some interesting ways to work with even Android devices to be able to do troubleshooting and so on if needed, right? So, okay. So anyway, that kind of walks through end to end. I realized I didn't update that slide either. I must have been asleep and forgotten about that one. But that's kind of end to end what I wanted to talk about in terms of Android enrollment specifically. And so at this stage, we will wrap it up, but we will very likely have another session in this enrollment series focused on Microsoft Application Management. Haven't decided that yet, but I'm pretty sure that I'll do a session on that related to enrollment. So we'll wrap it and see you